Welcome to Criminal Confidential Files. Here we revisit unsolved cases from history. We believe in immersion, so you will see nothing on the screen. Please keep your phone aside and enjoy the story. The year is 1946. The place, the border town of Texarkana, a city split right down the middle by the state line between Texas and Arkansas. A chill wind rustles the leaves of the tall pine trees surrounding the town, a fitting backdrop for the fear that had begun to grip the city. It wasn't the fear of war, which had just ended, but a different, more chilling kind of fear, the terror of a phantom, a relentless killer who seemed to strike at will, choosing young love as his target. Our story begins in late March, on the 24th, when the bodies of Richard Griffin, a 29-year-old man, and 17-year-old Polly Ann Moore were discovered in Richard's car, parked on a secluded country road on the Texas side of town. They had both been shot with .32 caliber bullets, with wounds in their heads, leaving the Texarkana community both puzzled and disturbed. What could have possibly motivated this brutal attack? Then, just 3 weeks later, the horror was renewed. On April 14th, 17-year-old Paul Martin and 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker were found murdered in equally gruesome circumstances. Their bodies were also riddled with bullets, the same caliber as before. Paul's body was discovered on the side of a dirt road, a mile from his car, while Betty Jo's was found a mile and a half west, partially hidden behind a tree. Both had struggled desperately. The press, eager for a story, fueled the growing unease, and the local police, along with the Texas Rangers and the FBI, began what was quickly becoming a huge investigation. The connection between these murders was evident. Both couples had been young, seemingly innocent, and both had been killed with the same type of weapon. It was terrifying. The people of Texarkana, already on edge from the war, were now gripped by a palpable fear. They locked their doors, bought guns, and kept their porch lights burning all night. The idea of a cold-blooded killer lurking in the shadows, preying on young couples, was enough to send shivers down their spines. And there was the eerie and unsettling fact that in all these cases, the victims had been discovered either in or around their cars, which were also the sites where spent .32 caliber shell casings had been found. It was as if the killer were using the symbol of young love, the automobile, as the stage for dark drama. As the investigation unfolded, it was clear that local authorities were working around the clock. They even requested the FBI's assistance. Agents who were normally focused on federal violations were sent to assist the sheriff, taking photographs of the crime scenes, dusting for fingerprints, and examining the victims' cars. All this assistance was given as a matter of police cooperation because there didn't seem to be any clear federal violation that would have been considered an FBI's jurisdiction. The documents reveal a meticulous but ultimately frustrating process. Ballistics testing confirmed that the same caliber gun was used in both sets of killings. But whose gun was it? The search for a motive also proved fruitless. Paul and Betty Jo had known each other since kindergarten, and there was no apparent reason for anyone to target them. Similarly, Richard and Pollyann seemed to be normal kids, well liked, and members of prominent, wealthy families. Fingerprints were examined, and indeed 3 latent prints were found in the Martin Booker case that couldn't be explained as belonging to the victims or car owner. Also, a latent print was found on the steering wheel of Martin's car, but this too did not match either victim or the car owner. A swab test on Betty Jo revealed the presence of male seminal fluid, indicating a sexual assault by the murderer. There is a chilling note in the report that states that it was not definitely known if the 17-year-old Pollyann had been raped, as the undertaker had already embalmed her body before a thorough examination could be performed. The first few weeks of the investigation were frantic. News reports began to link the FBI and Texas Rangers with local and state police. Agents offered the full cooperation of their laboratories and fingerprint facilities. The FBI was ready to step in with an unlawful flight to avoid prosecution investigation if the suspect was identified and it was determined he might cross state lines to avoid apprehension. Then, a lead. A teletype sent to the Dallas office on May 1st revealed that the authorities had developed a strong suspect.
A man named Claude Wesley Varble.
A white male of unknown age, Varble had given his residence as Dallas, but stated he was recently discharged from the Army in California. Further investigation found that Varble had a less than stellar record in the Navy, with a history of misconduct, unauthorized leave, and intoxication. The Navy had discharged him on March 4th, 1946. As a shoemaker, he was described as being 5'6.5" tall, with red hair and blue eyes, weighing 146 pounds. The Navy records also mentioned his mother and a friend, Vernon Pritchett. He had a forwarding address listed in Dallas, but then the investigators received another lead, or rather, a new layer to the puzzle. On May 4th, 1946, a farmer and deputy sheriff named Virgil Stark was shot and killed while sitting in his home just north of Texarkana. The assailant had fired through a window. Stark's wife was in another room when it happened. She was shot twice while trying to call for help. She survived, but the shooting added another layer of terror to the investigation. The investigation now focused on a third murder, but there were similarities between the previous killings and Stark's death. 32 caliber shells had been found at the crime scene, and a ballistics comparison confirmed that bullets and cartridge cases were fired from the same gun. In the Martin Booker case, it had been identified as an American-made Colt automatic, while in the Stark case, it was identified as a .22 caliber automatic, Colt Woodman to be specific. This was a challenge for the investigators, as if they were not already puzzled enough. A teletype on May 7th from FBI Little Rock revealed the 3 prior murders had gained statewide publicity and caused public concern, and that the case was of an outstanding importance. There were 3 unexplainable latent fingerprints in the Martin Booker case and a palm print in the Stark case. Could these latent prints be the connection that brings it all together? By May 14th, the FBI were also investigating a seemingly unrelated case of rape in Oklahoma, where a Charles Coleman had been arrested. But he, too, was quickly dismissed when it was discovered that on the night of the last murder, he was in Colorado. On May 15th, a teletype message advised that Claude Wesley Varble was also a suspect. As outstanding suspect the Texarkana police have developed so far in their murder investigation. By this time, local newspapers were reporting that Claude was honorably discharged from the Navy. By this time, it was discovered that a black cord, apparently used as a hatband, was found in the Martins' car, and it didn't belong to anyone connected with the victims or the car. They attempted to trace it back to its manufacturer, but that lead turned into a dead end. There were too many manufacturers supplying that cord type. On May 16, 1946, the teletype advised that Claude Varble had Navy serial number 847-43-52. He was inducted in Shreveport, Louisiana. A check on the serial number revealed a history of misconduct. Incredibly, on May 19th, another murder took place. This time, it was a deputy sheriff from Miller County who had become a victim. Now, the authorities were really beginning to doubt their theory that these killings were connected. The Stark murder was different. From the method of attack to the weapon used, was it really the same killer? The teletypes kept coming. On May 17th, it was announced that the bullet and cartridge cases submitted in the Stark and other case were identified as being a .22 Colt Woodman automatic pistol. This information came from the Texas Department of Public Safety. On May 20th, all fingerprint evidence submitted in both series of killings had turned out to be negative when compared to latent prints. On May 21st, it was determined that the Bureau of Identification has advised that Betty Jo Booker had been criminally assaulted by the unknown murderer. On May 22nd, the report states that approximately 9:15 p.m. on May 3, 1940, a farmer and deputy sheriff residing 9½ miles north of Texarkana, Arkansas, was killed instantly while sitting in his home by an unidentified assailant who fired through the window from outside. His wife, Mrs. Virgil Stark, was in another room when this took place, and while attempting to telephone for help, was also shot and received 2 wounds. On May 23rd, there is reference to bullets and blood specimens that were forwarded by airmail to the laboratory. It was indicated that the bullets were a .22 caliber, possibly fired from an automatic weapon, and that small pattern of bullet holes on window screens suggested it was an automatic weapon. The same teletype states no positive connection between this murder and the others. However, it states that the same individual is believed responsible for the series of murders. Then, on May 29th, a teletype revealed that all bullets and cartridge cases submitted in all cases were fired from the same firearm. Instant gun is also one palm print was developed, and all evidence for murders number 1 and 2 were being sent to Bureau of Public Safety in Austin, Texas, and evidence for murder 3 to Bureau. By May 31st, the reports became more focused when a teletype advised that Claude Wesley Varble, the prime suspect, was inducted on November 20th, 1943 at Shreveport, Louisiana. Varbo had received multiple captain's masts, deck courts martials, and one misconduct report for absence without official leave and intoxication. He was honorably discharged on March 4th, 1946. He is further described as having red hair, blue eyes, and a ruddy complexion, and having a social security number, and then his home and forwarding address are given. This same teletype indicates that the Navy records were identical with FBI number 2971439. But then a further development, and another potential suspect named Charles Coleman is arrested in Paris, Texas for rape at Atoka, Oklahoma, and brought there. He initially told the authorities that he was in Texarkana on the nights of murders number 1 and 2, but this was quickly dismissed when it was verified. He was in Colorado on the night of murder. On June 1st, it's advised that Captain Gonzalez advised that Varbo, the outstanding suspect, gave his residence as Dallas, but stated he was recently discharged from the Army in California. By June 2nd, a teletype reveals that authorities are looking into if Claude Wesley Varbo received additional training as a storekeeper. And then on June 6th, it was reported that a black hat cord found in Martin's car and sent to the lab was of no identifiable value, and that it was likely part of a larger size hat. By June 14, 1946, it was reported that Charles A. Coleman, who was initially a suspect in the case, was also identified by the wife of Virgil Harmon as her assailant. And then it's all over. The last report we have here is dated January 1950, and it deals with the technicalities of bullet comparison. The investigation into the Texarkana phantom murders, there are no conclusions, no arrests. The story simply fades into history. It's like reading a mystery that is missing the final chapter. There are a few theories that have floated around over the years. Some believe Claude Varbo could have been the killer, the troubled veteran who returned home, who was known to have a violent temper, but there is no solid evidence linking him to all three sets of murders. And there is the very problematic fact that he was discharged on March, while the first set of murders occurred on March 20. Some others have theorized that it may have been Charles Coleman, that he made up stories about being in Texarkana. It is all circumstantial, however, and there is no conclusive evidence linking him to these attacks. And then the most chilling question of all, was it all one killer, or were they perhaps separate crimes? The .32 caliber gun that linked the first two killings was not the same weapon used in the Stark attack. The randomness and brutal nature of these crimes continues to haunt. The story of the Phantom Killer of Texarkana remains an unsettling and unresolved chapter in American true crime history, a disturbing glimpse into the darkness that can lurk in the shadows of even the quietest of towns. Thank you for listening. If you liked our effort, please like, share, and subscribe.